to our usual Tuesday Zoom meeting with the Pacific, and it's a special one today, recognizing and catching up with the only two national championship teams ever at Pacific, the women's volleyball teams of 1985 and 1986. And around the horn, I'd like to introduce John Dunning, who, of course, was the head coach and the head coach for 16 years at Pacific, a legend in his own right. Therese Boyle, class of 1986, Elaina Oden, class of 1990, and Mary Tribbett, class of 1988. Welcome to all of you. I'm going to start the way I always do, and that's asking everybody how they're doing and where you are right now. And I'm going to start with Coach Dunning.
Hi, everybody. I live in Lodi, California with my wife.
Me too.
And it's a nice, small little farming town out kind of near Sacramento. And my oldest daughter and her family live in town, so we get to see our grandkids all the time.
Awesome. Therese, how about you?
Oh, I live in Chicago, my hometown, and just raising a family. We have 6 kids, and my husband's retired, so we're enjoying that. And my one of my daughters does play college volleyball.
And where does she play?
She plays at Notre Dame.
Notre Dame. Fantastic.
So I'm still in the game. I run camps and clinics, and I'm able to still keep in touch with the college level as well, since I have a daughter playing.
That's awesome. Elaina?
I'm in Orange County, and right now I'm working from home. I'm working with the state of California, and I'm really honored to be asked to do something with you guys. So
we're honored to have you. And last but not least, Mary.
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm currently sitting in Nashville, Tennessee, in my son's house, but I reside in the Denver metro area, Colorado. Have been there for over 20 years now. 3 kids are all grown and gone, and have 2 grandsons, ages 3, and the other one will turn 1 at the end of this month.
Awesome. Well, it's great to have you all, and glad you guys are all doing well. I want to start by, and this is going to be as much an education for me as it is for a lot of people on here. But I mean, I've worked at Pacific, just to give you all some background now, for about 13 years. And I've only heard the legends of women's volleyball from the mid 80s. So I'm going to ask you guys to kind of walk us through that time frame. But before I do, I want to set the scene for Pacific volleyball before the Dunning era. So in the early 80s, and I think Coach Dunning would probably be best to prime us for what Pacific volleyball was like in the early 80s before you arrived, Coach.
Okay. Well, in the mid 70s, there was a really good young coach at, holy cow, Ohio State, Terry Liskevich. And he had really good success there, ended up coaching a few Olympians there. And they recruited him to come out and start a program at UOP, and he's a program maker. He's a really smart, really well connected, and he just organizes things so well. And he started the program, built it, got a lot of people in the community like Bob Klinger and Mark Cruz involved in the program. Built it up to the point where they were 4, 5, 6 years. They were in the Final Four or hovering right around it. 1980 almost won. They were in the final match, almost won the championship. And that's on Terry. He then decided to leave at Christmas in 1984 to go become our Olympic coach, which he was for 12 years, for 3 quadrenniums. And I was one of the people they interviewed and got the job and started at Christmas in 84. And the girls can tell the story, women can tell the story from there.
So just to set the scene a little bit more, like, so you didn't inherit, I mean, you inherited a pretty good spot, so to speak. Like the cupboard wasn't bare when you got there, correct?
No, and Therese, could speak more to that than I. They had a great year. Eileen Dempster, Jan Saunders, Robin Burns. The year before they were seniors. And I think there were 5 in that class that graduated. So we had 7 players returning, but some really, really good ones who obviously proved themselves to be the best group in the country for 3 years. But the cupboard was not bare because, for one, there was a program that was really established, one of the top 5 programs in the country every year, and had 7 good players returning to build around. And then a recruiting class walked in the door that changed our program, along with the class the year before, which Mary was in. Mm-hmm.
So in that same vein, I want to ask each of the former student athletes. I'm so used to interviewing like actual current student athletes, but I guess former student athletes. What drew you to Pacific? And I'll start with Therese, since you are the elder of the 3.
Well, there was definitely a Chicago connection. Terry Liskevich being one of them, and Nancy, his wife, played at Pacific. And then Ann Conley went to Mother Macaulay, the same high school that I went to, and then Kathy Lum. So they were ahead of me, and I saw the Chicago connection. And Julie Maginot and I, both being from Chicago, went out to Pacific, and we just felt like it was a very tight-knit, family-oriented program. And culture, the community embraced us. We felt as though volleyball was the most important sport on campus. So we felt very valued. So it was worth coming all the way from Chicago. And remember, back then, volleyball in the Midwest was pretty weak. So the best programs in the country, obviously back in the 80s, were all on the West Coast.
I was going to say, was it kind of a dream for you to go play volleyball on the West Coast because of that dynamic in the country?
It was, and it was kind of a given. You know what I mean? The top players there was probably 4 or 5 schools to choose from back then. And back then, everybody went to the West Coast. Everyone did. The top players did. So that all changed shortly after I left, and I'm sure these guys can tell you all about that.
And quickly, just take us a little bit more into the Chicago to Pacific connection, because that really kind of is intriguing, even back in the 80s when people did want to come out west.
Absolutely. It was a very strong club culture. John Torjanek built up a very strong club, as John did back when he was coaching, and players that played for, when it was called Windy City back then, a lot of them went on and played high-level volleyball. So it was very small back then. There was only 3 clubs in the state of Illinois. So it was rare to find, you know what I mean, just a few little players here and there. It wasn't like it is now. Now there's hundreds of great players. And back then there were, I don't know, John, Elaina, Mary, what would you say? Top 10, maybe 10 top players in the country, and now there's hundreds. Yeah. But there were definitely some in Chicago based on a hotbed of club volleyball that started because of John Torjanek. So we're very grateful to John Torjanek and Terry Liskevich, once again, having that Chicago connection. He grew up in Chicago.
Mary, how about you? What drew you to Pacific and to become a member of the class of 1988?
Well, my situation is actually quite different, because I actually grew up on a dairy farm in Minnesota, and I didn't even move out to, I moved out to California my senior year of high school, where volleyball obviously was a hotbed, and I actually had the choice to stay in Minnesota where I would for my senior year, but knew for my volleyball career that it was probably better for me to go ahead and move to California. My dad had moved out for a job, and my parents let me decide whether I wanted to come out or not. So this is a situation, I don't know how many people know, but John was actually the coach of a high school and club at the time, my senior year. So it was the year before he got the job at Pacific. And we moved out to the Bay Area where he was coaching at Fremont High School. And I showed up to a summer camp for volleyball just because I wanted to go to a volleyball camp in California, because that's where volleyball was big. And I ended up going to John's Fremont High School Bay Club volleyball camp. And so there was a little bit of a connection there. He was in Sunnyvale. That's where my dad's job was. So ended up going to Fremont High School and having him as a coach. He was actually my high school trigonometry teacher as well at the time.
John was?
John was my senior year high school trigonometry teacher, club and high school volleyball coach. And so through John, he knew the volleyball world, because I didn't. I had just moved out from California. So he had some connections because nobody knew me. I didn't know the schools. So he kind of helped me, guide me, and let me know, schools that were good that, he talked to Terry and was the one that got me actually into Pacific because nobody knew me. So that was my best option. I had a couple, but getting, out and going to see the campus, and it was a beautiful campus, and I wasn't a big school person anyway, so went ahead and saw the campus and fell in love with it, talked to Terry, and got the job. So it was pretty exciting for me to be able to go Division I after coming from Minnesota as a nobody.
That's awesome. Elaina, how about you? I mean, you were already on the West Coast, right? You were in Irvine?
Yeah, exactly. It kind of started my neighbors when I lived on the base. They were from Stockton, and it'd always be like Stockton. And I was like, where is this Stockton? And then I didn't get to see it until my freshman year in high school when my sister was going around recruiting, and she went by Stanford and UOP, and I stopped at UOP, and I was like, wow, this is really cool. And then I also saw them for years and years, play like at UCLA at the NIVT. They would always show up, and they were always really good, and they were always really classy. And I thought, they had a big crowd with them, and I was thinking, yeah, I could totally see myself there.
Cool.
And she was the top recruit in the country. Don't forget that.
Yeah,
For sure. Was it just seeing the campus that got you going there, or what was it that locked it in for you going to Pacific?
Yeah, the campus was pretty cool, but by far it was the team. You went there and they seemed like they all liked each other, and they hung out with each other. And then meeting John, that was John's first year that we got there, but he seemed really cool. And I mean, I always say, like, when he picked us up from the airport, me and Brooke and Andrea, we were driving in his car, and he had this General Public tape, and we're like, General Public? He's listening to General Public, and we got to play that tape, and we're like, wow, this could be really cool. I mean, it's just kind of weird stuff like that going through an 18-year-old's mind that kind of made the decision.
So what's General Public? I guess I have to look it up. Maybe some
band.
of you know.
It's an 80s alternative band.
Okay.
Yeah. Tenderness is our song.
That was apparently the only cool moment of my life.
If it got you Elaina, then it paid off big time. You picked a good time to have a cool moment.
And I don't remember that story, Elaina. Thank you. That's a great moment. Yep.
That kind of leads me into where I wanted to go next, which is back to Coach Dunning. What was recruiting like for you when you first arrived at Pacific?
Oh, just picture it. I mean, the team had been in the Final Four. They were at the top of the world, and they hired a high school coach. So that's weird. Not happening nowadays. But I'd known Terry, and Terry trusted me, and so he put in a good word, and so it was one of the amazing things that's happened to me in my life, and I was not ready for it.
So then why did it work? Because that was where I wanted to go with you next, is why did it work? Because you say it wouldn't happen today, but obviously there was some magic when it happened back in the day. So yeah. What was the secret to it being successful?
Well, I'll set the tone a little bit. There's some big time players in the program by the time we got together to actually start practice. But if you back up a little bit, in the spring, we started practicing the first day. I was living in a little room at the University Center on campus because I left in the middle of the year and left my high school team and my classes and everything. And I walked into practice the first day, and Therese might not remember this. I was standing, I'm sure she doesn't, standing next to Steve and Julie Maginot, who are all Americans. I mean, they're great players. I thought Therese was the best player in the country her senior year in high school that I saw as a club coach. And I'm standing looking at the arena, which I'm used to a high school gym, and going, God, this is just so cool. And I heard Julie say something like, boy, did we get a big time coach, when she heard me say that. You guys know Julie, and you can picture her saying that. Julie was intense. But, it's sometimes things happen where the chemistry is right and things come together. It feels right from the start. We had a lot to learn. I had a lot to learn. They were patient. They knew there were things that I didn't know what I was doing. And then there were some things that I was good at and I could help. And and they all helped each other. They liked each other. We had some amazing things happen in the program where people got to express how much they cared about other people by things that they did. And that is what makes teams great. You can add all the players you want together, but if you don't add together that amazing feeling that you can get in teams, you're not going to win, especially at the highest level. And so the groups fit together. Mary's class, after Therese and Julie left, Mary's class and Elena's class were the core of the program for 3 years. And they all loved each other and did stuff with each other and were crazy together. And Julie and Therese's class with Andrea and Markle, I mean, they were the one that set the tone for, we've been close. We want to win this year. It's our senior year. Let's go. And it just kind of was cool. It lit it up right from the start. We rarely lost, and we beat up a lot of people.
I don't want to skip. I'm not going to skip over, trust me, the 85, 86 teams. We're going to go deep into that right now, but this would be an opportune time to ask you, Coach, how much of the experience of coming to Pacific and taking over that program and winning your first year, how much of that did you take with you when you went to Stanford in the early 2000s? And was that experience transferable, that the one you had at Pacific to Stanford?
Yeah. I mean, it's just, how could you not coach for 16 years and be at a different place? And I mean, both places are great. The things that I remember at UOP, there's no way anything could be better than that. You don't compare things, you know. But I love UOP. I love coaching at Stanford as well, but I really have a deep love still for UOP, even though, you know, I'm just starting to go back and do things with their program and watch games and that kind of thing now. But this group of people, they will laugh when I say this, taught me a lot.
I'm sure they did.
Yes, sure they did. Yeah.
We broke it.
I want to go and start at the beginning of 1985 and talk to the athletes now. And I'll start with Therese. And you're going to all get the same question. Did you sense that you guys could win the national championship in 1985 right at the start of that season? And Therese, you could be the first to answer.
You know, we really weren't sure because, as we all know, it's on any given day. You know, we all know who's going to show up the weekend of the Final Four. Getting into the Final Four was pretty easy, but once you got to the Final Four, it was rough. It was hard. I feel like what happened those 2 days, everybody kind of had their same day at the office. You know, we all performed the way we did, but I felt like the game changer was, number one, you know, Mary and Brooke and Andrea coming off the bench and doing such a great job. And number two, Terry McGrath.
Terry McGrath
was the game changer. People didn't see that coming that weekend, and that was amazing. She was in the clutch, and I feel like, again, I think we all, Elaina and Mary, we all pretty much played our regular game, and John coaches, you know, the regular relaxed in his relaxed fashion, but Terry McGrath was definitely I hate to say one person, but it definitely helped tremendously that weekend. No, but like I said, other teams didn't expect it. So that was one. And then two was just, we were loose coming in. I felt like this team, they lived in the moment and they played in the moment. And that goes for the players and the coaches. And the freshmen coming in that year were very, very fun. They were very relaxed. They kept it real light, and so did John. So I think all those things, when you put them all together and, you know, on those 2 days, it just really made a big difference at the very end of the season.
Elaina, you were a freshman coming into that year. Can you expand on what Therese was saying?
Well, the relaxed attitude definitely is what it was. I mean, like, John came in, and it was kind of like the Wild West of college volleyball. I mean, that was like the fourth year of NCAA. It switched from NAIA. So, like, you know, we lucked up on John. He didn't try to make too many changes. He trusted us and let us do what we needed to do. And we got great leadership from Therese and Julie and Andrea. So it all just kind of came together at the right time. But, I mean, Terry McGrath at the end, big left-handed on the right side, who no one had a scouting report for.
Right.
And that might have been what put us over the top. but also there were no expectations on us either. No one was expecting us to win. When we were at the Final Four banquet, the USC coach was like, there are only really 3 teams in this tournament, Stanford, UCLA, and USC. Like, no one even gave us a chance. So that kind of fired us up and took the pressure off, and, everything worked out.
Elaina, did you feel like even as a freshman, you could come in and immediately be the impact player that you ended up being the All-American player that you became?
No, I wasn't really thinking about that. It was more like just being part of a team and doing my part. And luckily I didn't have to, because we had good leadership. So, they took the pressure off. So I just had to go out and do my little thing. But no, I mean, that was one of my goals when I went to college, win a national championship, get a degree, and make it to the Olympics. And I got all 3 of them.
That's awesome. We're going to talk about the Olympics in a little bit too with you. Mary, how about you? Did you feel going into 1985 that you guys could take home the national title?
I think Therese and Elaina really hit the nail on the head. It was a very loose, they called us, it was in print everywhere. We were loosey-goosey, the freshman and sophomore group, and with a newer to college head coach, nobody expected anything of us. And we just had everything to prove, nothing to lose. And so we were able just to kind of go, again, the leadership was there, was Therese, Julie, and Andrea. The rest of us kind of followed their lead. And we all, like everybody said, we all really, really liked each other. I personally should have hated Elaina. She came in, I knew I was going to be a starter my sophomore year. And then Elaina comes in and it's like, oh, dang it. Okay, now back on the bench again. But we kind of pushed each other, learned from each other. She was clearly the number 1 recruit, and we were excited to have her. And I was excited to have her as well, because I knew that I had to work for my spot. And I got my time, but she beat me. She deserved it. And look what it got us. And I'll never give that up. And Elaina and I are as close now, I think, as we ever have been. So that's pretty exciting as well.
That's such great perspective. I'll keep it with Mary and go back around the horn. Can you take us through some of the signature moments from the 1985 season, and outside of obviously winning the national championship, but kind of on your way to the national championship that stand out in your mind?
So many, just knowing, getting into the regionals or getting through the season and being as successful as we were, with as young as we were, with, the coach that we had, and just getting to know each other, having fun as we're doing it, winning games that we weren't supposed to win. We get to the regionals, having lost to Cal Poly twice during that year, meeting them in the regional finals. They think it's going to be a walk in the park, no problem. We're going to nationals. And for us to come in and go, no, it's not going to happen. We're having too much fun. We're not ready for this to end. And for us to beat them and then get to the Final Four, and like they were saying, it was that banquet, with Chuck Irby saying what he was, and with our freshmen turning to the USC girls at the banquet and saying, hey, are you guys going to eat your desserts? Because if you don't want them, we're going to have them. That happened. We were at that banquet, and
they were so pissed.
they were all just sitting, with their hands in their laps, and the desserts came around at that banquet, and they sat in front of them, and they weren't allowed to touch them. And we had that table of freshmen, Brooke and Andrea. Those guys just turned and said, "Hey, you guys going to eat your desserts?" And they're like, "Oh, we can't have them." And literally, they just kind of came over, took them, and just things like that all season long were just so much fun to be a part of.
Elaina, just to expand on that, what changed when you guys beat Cal Poly after losing to them twice, and how much did you take away from the losses that helped you get over that hump later to go to nationals?
I can't even remember losing to Cal Poly twice.
I don't
Cal Poly twice?
I don't remember.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I can't remember.
Mary, can you remember, since you brought it up?
Yeah.
Just there's playing. The biggest thing for me is I remember actually playing at Cal Poly and having those fans. They were so rude, and so me. So they were. It was a smaller gym, and they were so close to the, to the court. You're back there ready to serve, and you've got somebody that's 5 feet in your ear saying things that I can't even repeat on here. And getting so close, they had players, Dee Bodner was there setting and just wanting to beat them so bad. And we lost in 5 and it was just so close, I remember. And so by the time we got to that regional finals, we're like, it's not going to happen again.
Well, and Therese got hurt in warm-ups during that match. Somebody kneed her in the quad.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, so from the start, it was a little off-kilter.
Yeah.
And it was a very hard place to play.
Yeah.
Therese, can you expand on that, on getting hurt in warm-ups?
Well, Elaina and I collided. We were playing defense. I think we were warming up. Remember? And we collided.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was all good. South
Sorry, I'm sorry.
However many years later, the apology comes in. Therese, take us through the 85 season and some of the memorable stops along the way to the national championship.
Well, there's so many, but I do want to mention something on the 85 team. And before then, it was Terry, obviously, we talked about him laying the foundation, but also Steve Lowe.
Yeah.
Stevie.
Yeah, we're going to talk about Steve a little bit. Steve was our assistant coach with Terry, and then we were so grateful that he stayed with John as well. But he was a big, big part of our success. And he went on and obviously took over the program at University of Wisconsin. And, of course, he passed away early, but he laid the foundation there. I think about the foundation he laid. Terry did. Steve stayed with them. Steve moved on. And Wisconsin next year has a really good chance of winning, and a lot of that has to do with Steve Lowe. So I just want to mention that, number one. Back to our team, I just remember being in Kalamazoo, Michigan, and we were so relaxed. And I remember people were rolling in the snow because some people had never seen snow. They're outside rolling in the snow. It's really cold out. And I think somebody taped Janet Wolf up, like with some athletic tape. I mean, it was crazy. Some of the things.
I was at the gym. Yeah.
Yeah, we definitely stayed loose and did some crazy things, crazier than that, which I'm not going to mention right now. But I think that's a lot of, why we were just really relaxed. We were very relaxed, and, it's almost like we had no worries in the world. We didn't feel a lot of pressure. So we came in there, and like these guys said, we had nothing to lose, and people didn't think we were going to win, and, we ended up winning.
All right, so take us through the 1985 Nationals in Kalamazoo. I can picture the setting because I actually got to go to Kalamazoo with the Pacific basketball team. I think it was the Bracket Buster game in 2013, I want to say. So I can kind of picture the town and the whole setting. But and I'll start with Coach Dunning. What was the scene like for you going into the national championship match and knowing that you could be the first ever national champion that Pacific has had?
I think part of what the players are hinting at is we didn't think about it that way very much.
Yeah.
They were having fun. They were getting better. And they were just kind of in the moment. And I think Steve and I and Perry, we didn't get in their way in that respect and talk about that stuff very much. We didn't talk about awards very much, even though Elaina was winning all of them. And we didn't, it wasn't what we were thinking about. And so we knew who UCLA was. And so we knew they were great. We knew we'd have to play great, and we just went and played. And that all those 3 of those other teams knew that there was a little pressure on them, like everybody's talking about. Just as on the side, I want to bring up something because we had an administrator with us, Tom Stubbs, who is a long-time UOP person and just an amazing Tiger. I don't know if the girls remember this, the little tiger puppet he had.
I remember.
Oh, yeah. We were in a timeout in the finals, I think in the last game at the time.
Yeah.
And we're all in a circle, sitting or standing or whatever, and a hand reaches through all the bodies and it's a little tiger, and it's saying something like, "You can do it, girls, you can do it." This little puppet talking. You guys remember that?
I do. I do. You don't remember, Elaina?
No.
This was not happening.
Tom was awesome.
Else, but that's who Tom was. He was just going to be a proud tiger. That's at the Final Four on the court in the last time out. I'll never forget it. It was cool.
So, Coach, how do you process this? Like, you're going, and you mentioned it earlier, you're going from coaching high school and making this jump, and all of a sudden here you are in a national championship setting. How did you keep your calm in this setting?
It's just like the players. I mean, how many big matches that all of them played in before they got there? For me, I'd coached a lot of good teams. It was just at another level. I was used to winning or having my teams win. And so I was approaching it and my nature is to be very analytical and just kind of roll with things. And so I was just it was the next match. I wasn't thinking bigger than that. But I did have a feeling that we were the team that was getting better faster at that point. And I think that really matters at the end of the season. You're either going up or you're going down. There's no one sitting still right there. And I didn't know about the other teams, but I had a feeling like we were going up coming off the regionals. And those are dangerous teams at that point because it's on any given night, like Therese said, and that was our night, 2 nights in a row.
Hey, John, did you get pressure? Was there any pressure on you to do it that year? Because, usually pressure rolls downhill. You didn't roll any pressure downhill. I was just wondering what was on you when you went into the finals.
Yeah, and you know what? Julie usually helps me with everything. So I probably talked things out with her. I mean, I met up with the same stuff you guys did when they were interviewing the coaches for ESPN or whatever it was for television. I was in waiting while one of the other coaches was being interviewed, and he said, this is a different coach, said the same thing. They said, well, who's the favorite here? And the coach said, well, there's 3 teams here that have a good chance. So you can't help but those things affecting you. But as a coach, I have to do a good job because I think players are a reflection of coaches a lot of the time. And if coaches get stressed, then players can get stressed too. Yeah. And I didn't want to do that. And so, because our team didn't feel that way. And so I think our whole staff did a good job of just doing our jobs.
So do I.
Each of you, and I'll start with Elaina, take us through the moment that you win the national championship, first ever for Pacific. And what an accomplishment. I mean, Elaina, you're a freshman. Coach Dunning's in his first season. Nobody expected you all to do it. Elaina, take us into the moment and what that felt like.
Well, it was kind of a bittersweet moment for me because I was playing against my sister who was a senior and, she hadn't won a championship yet. And so it was kind of hard to be on the other side, taking it away from her. But then I was really proud of my team. I remember when we got scheduled, we won the semifinals, so we knew who was going to be in the finals. I was walking into practice and Julie Maginot turns to me and goes, so you're going to play hard, right? Yeah, I'll play hard. I'll play hard. But I just remember Mary and I hugging, I think, at the end. Yeah. I think we just kind of hugged, and it was kind of a lot to take in at the moment. I mean, I was happy, but I was a little sad too.
It was, it was interesting because I remember that moment so well. Because the whole team, we won, that last point goes down, we win, everybody rushes the court. And Elaina, you may not remember, you actually turned and kind of did a dive, and you were on the ground on your belly at the end of the court. And the rest of the team was right in a big huddle, jumping up and down, screaming in the middle of the court. And that's when I saw you, and I went over to you and kind of patted you on the back and lifted you up, and we were actually on our knees. And that's that hug that is still in photos everywhere. And then it was like, okay, let's go. I mean, I understand, but it's us. Let's get together. We got the hug, and we stood up, and then we kind of joined the rest of the team in the middle of the court.
Therese,
I'm so glad you did that.
It was a lot on Elaina. I wasn't going to bring it up, and so since she brought it up, it was so emotional for her to play against her sister. Kim was an amazing player, but I think we were down. When you really think about it, we were down 11-2, John, in the fourth set.
Yeah.
And it wasn't speed score back then, so we were down 11-2, and when some people say it's a fluke that we won, I mean, when you're down 11-2 and you fight back and you come back in the fourth set and you end up winning, that's not a fluke. That's just a team that, that fights and knows how to win and figure out a way to win. So I remember talking to some of the girls on the floor, and because Elaina was just exhausted. I mean, you lay it all out there on the floor, but also she was exhausted because, emotionally playing against her sister. I just remember a couple of us saying to each other, we have to do this in 4. We have to do this right now, because I don't know, with the 5th set, she's getting exhausted. We knew that. We expected it to happen. So I think that was really an incentive for us to finish it in 4 sets. She was tired.
Go ahead.
Tired. Yeah.
One of the things that people have to remember is that back then, it was best 3 out of 5, but we were playing side out scoring to 15, and only the 5th set game was rally scoring. So, I mean, I remember playing matches that lasted 3.5 hours, because you could get, there were points that weren't scored because you would side out, and, no points were getting scored. And if you're going 5 games, it can take forever that way, which I'm sure is why they changed it.
Elaina, were you aware that your teammates really knew that you were emotionally drained? Were you aware of that at all? Or did they just
actually, I had no idea. I was so wrapped up in my own thing and just trying to keep it together. I didn't even notice. But I mean, hearing it now, it doesn't surprise me the way these guys, have been there for me after we graduated. That doesn't surprise me that they said that.
Coach Dunning, take us inside your moment from 1985. You win, and I'm sure it was just pure joy and adrenaline. Were you able to enjoy it, or was it surreal for you in the moment?
Oh, please. Yeah, out of body experience, I guess, would be a good way to describe it. Just all of a sudden you're in this moment where, oh my God, that just happened. It isn't a dream. And I'd like to have more dreams like that. Hard to describe and almost not real. And that because then it sinks in, like, the UOP teams that came before that were so good and came so close and they didn't win. We'd built up to that point and we won for ourselves, but we won for them as well. Yeah. And for Terry, who built the program, I mean, for me, just thinking about that can make me cry, because I'm really good friends with Terry and we have stayed close all along. But for him, and he was the best. It was like, God, I'm so happy for you. There's no, I wish it was me or any of that other garbage that could come up. But for him, it was none of that. It was, wow, that's awesome. I'm so happy for you. So it was very, very surreal. And, then you start to get together with the fans away at another site after you're done, and it sinks in and you can kind of talk about plays and relive it in that moment a little bit. I was very worried about Elaina most of the night. Because that was such a hard thing that she did, but you knew as a player, I'm surprised Julie asked her that someone else mentioned, because Elaina is ultra competitive. So she is going to be in the zone, even if Kim is on the other side. And Elaina played an amazing match, as did the whole group. But she's that competitive that she's just going to do it and then think about it afterwards. Yeah.
Great memories. So Pacific wins its first national title, 1985 women's volleyball. And now you go into 1986, and of course the Nationals are at Spanos Center. What was your sense going into 1986? Did you all feel that you could repeat? And I'll start with Coach Dunning, since I'm with him already.
Oh no, I want to hear the players talk.
Therese.
I was not on that 86 team.
That's right, you were not.
But, and there was no juniors on the team in 85. So when Julie and Andrea and I left, everybody returned because there was for 2 more years, right, John? Because there was no juniors behind us. So Mary's class was the next class.
Right. Yeah, we had no seniors that year for the 86 team. There were no seniors. So it was the 4 in our class. I had myself, Terry McGrath, and the twins, Liz and Dorothy Hurt. And then the class that Elaina was in with the 5 loosey-goosey freshmen. Elaina.
Let's give a shout out, Elaina.
Yeah.
Your class. Let's list who are they?
Brooke Harrington, Andrea Reddick, Leona Bielefeld, and
Janet
Wolf.
Janet Wolf.
So Therese, I know you weren't on the team, but what was it like? What was it like for you to leave your last year, win the national championship, and then did you have a sense that next team could go on and repeat?
Absolutely. Yeah, we knew for sure that they were going to win the next year. But I was lucky because I graduated and I went on to coach at Wisconsin with Steve Lowe. So I really felt connected. But yeah, absolutely. As long as they stayed healthy, that was at the end of the day, that was the most important thing.
Elaina, I would imagine that you were super confident going into 1986. You were, as a freshman on a national championship team, you have, it seems, all the momentum in your favor, and you're just getting started. I would imagine that would have been your feeling going into 1986.
Well, I kind of started to feel the pressure in 86 because there was a big target on our back. So everybody was gunning for us. Everywhere we went, they would have, the biggest crowd they ever had. Everybody played their best game against us. That was challenging, but it was like everybody was kind of up for the challenge. It's like we have a chance to, back to back, and only Hawaii's done that before. We have a shot here. So we were kind of driven to do it, but I wouldn't say there was definitely pressure in 86.
Did the team embrace going from being the hunters to being the hunted? Did they embrace that dynamic was going to change in 86?
Yeah, I would say so. Well, Mary, what do you think?
Well, the biggest thing I think I can remember, and I believe this is correct, somebody will have to correct me if I'm wrong, is that our first game back in Spanos Center after we won our national championship, we actually lost to Santa Barbara.
Yep.
And that just kind of slapped us across the face, saying it's not going to be as easy as you think it is. You better wake up and get going. That's the one thing, one of the few things that I could remember is coming in and going, oh yeah, we got this. We won it last year, no problem. And coming in our first game out of the gates at Spanos Center, we got beat. And it's like, oh, dang.
Well, and there were a lot of changes. If you just came back to the same lineup, it would be, a different thing. But with Therese and Julie carrying such a big load on our team and them graduating, we had a lot of different people. Mary jumped into the lineup. Dorothy switched positions. Brooke, who played a part-time role the year before, stepped onto the court. So we really had 3 new people in major roles on the court. So we had a lot to learn. These were all volleyball players. They were really well trained, came from great junior programs. But we had a lot to learn as a team again. And I agree, losing straightened us up straight up, and we had to kind of recognize what the world was going to do to us. And Elaina was right. Everybody was after us. But this team got better and better as the year went, as everybody settled into playing together in a new group too.
John, was it Kathy Gregory who was the coach of that Santa Barbara team?
That's
Yes,
the Kathy. Yeah.
A legend of the Dome. If you go to the Dome down at UC Santa Barbara, you see her face on the wall right there. Legendary coach.
Yeah.
So let's fast forward. You go through the 1986 season, and was the carrot kind of there for you guys that the national championships were at the Spanos Center? How much did that weigh on your minds going through the 86 season? And I'll start with Coach Dunning.
First of all, that's one of the hardest situations to play in.
Can imagine.
It makes the regionals ridiculously harder for that team than anybody else at the regionals. And so UOP had already hosted a Final Four, I think, in 1982, and didn't make it to the regional or to the Final Four, and had to sit at the Final Four in Stockton while the other teams played. So
I wasn't even out as a freshman. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
so we heard all the stories and what it felt like, and that's not happening to us. And so to have to play, and we had 4 of the top 5 teams in the country in the last poll in the regional, in our regional, at San Jose State. And I think that's where it was.
Yes, it was.
Yeah. And so the path was really hard and everything. But I think it's what made us as good as we were at the end to go through all that too.
Yeah, that was the first year that they changed the format of the Final Four. It was they went to regions, local, or what's the word I'm looking for?
They'd seeded before, yeah.
They went by regions. So you were going to get a team from the east, the west, north, south sort of thing, instead of straight seeds where the year before, we had UCLA and Stanford and USC and ourselves. It couldn't happen that year because we were all the better teams at that time were on the West Coast. And so our West region, we had all the, 4 or 5 of the top teams in the country that we had to beat to get there. And at the time, teams that, the Texas and Nebraska that made it to the Final Four, they were not as good as they are now. And so that made it even harder. In that gym at San Jose State, it was in their little shoebox. It wasn't in a big stadium. They had, the bleachers that were up high, and it was packed. Crazy.
Yeah.
Elaina, what was the feeling when you finally got to nationals and you knew you were going to be able to play at the Spanos Center in front of the home crowd? Was it a sense of relief? I'm sure it was a sense of joy too, and accomplishment, but was there a sense of relief there as well?
Yeah, relief, but the pressure was like, we got to do it. We've come this far. We can't stop. I mean, there was a lot of pressure we were putting on ourselves too, though.
So, all right, set the scene, and I can only imagine now, having worked inside the Spanos Center for 13 years, but set the scene in Spanos Center for when you guys take the floor in 1986 at Nationals, and Coach Dunning, you can start with just painting the setting of what that was like.
Yeah, I mean, it's as you would expect. The fans in Stockton who had supported us all year long, they had built a huge following. They were amazing. They were into it. It was electric for us. The other teams certainly must have had a little bit of fear in the moment for the setting that we were in, because you rarely get to play for something that big on your court. I mean, the rules don't even want to allow it to happen, and it pretty much can't happen now. And again, our team, we were healthy, we were lucky, and we were going up again. We were still getting better, and we'd been through the gauntlet the week before. And I think rather than just settle and go, oh, that's cool. I mean, our team wasn't made of people like that. They wanted to just beat people up at that point. Elaina doesn't settle, and the people around her don't settle. They are just, not that she's the only one, but she's certainly, everybody could look at her and go, God, I'm glad she's on our side. Because she's that good, but she's going to compete that hard, and everybody else can do what they do, and be strong around her because she was that strong.
Did you guys feel like we had something to prove? I kind of feel like people are like, oh, that was just a fluke last year. You guys can't do it again. I kind of felt that too.
You bet.
Mary, you want to expand on that?
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing, and kind of going on what Elaina and John was saying about Elaina, she didn't really feel like she was a leader, but she definitely was a leader by example. And we all felt that we needed to, and she, if you didn't know her, she could look really mean. She's one of those people that you better do work your butt off like she is, or you're going to get it. But the other thing is for the Final Four that year, it was a home court advantage, but we were actually in hotel for that for the Final Four. We were out of our room, so we weren't sleeping in our own beds. We were with each other together. in the hotel, going to practice. We had to travel further to practice for the Final Four than we ever did. But it was that team camaraderie where we were all together working for the same goal. And luckily, it really paid off.
Was it surreal being on your home floor for the national championships?
It was pretty awesome. The people keep saying that, oh, well, once you get there, it's a breeze because of the teams that you're playing. But I mean, Stanford was there. They ended up losing in the semifinals. We played both Texas and Nebraska to win it. But the fans, I mean, don't think I've ever seen Spanos Center as packed as it was. To be able to play, our families were all able to be there. Our friends from college were, they stayed. And so it was, to be able to finish and win and just have the crowd erupt the way that it did was really exciting.
Therese,
I have a good story if I can add it in here. And Elaina will probably correct me because usually when I tell stories, she corrects me, which is always fun because I can't remember anyway. But we were winning pretty easily against Nebraska, and we had a twin sister setting another twin in our line. Liz Hurt set Dorothy, or was a setter, and Dorothy was a hitter. And so we got to match point, and Liz, I'm pretty sure, decided she was going to set Dorothy match point national championship. And we didn't win a couple points in a row. So I called a timeout and said to Liz, this is the way I remember it, so Liz is probably going to call me. I called a timeout and said, look, we want to win. Don't set your sister, set Elaina, or I'm taking your sister out. And so we went back out on the court, and she set Elaina the next ball, and we won. No, that could only be in my own mind, but that's the way I remember it. It was just very typical us, because the twins were the twins. They were together. And I could see Liz wanting to do that for Dorothy, because that's what I would want to do for my sister too.
Yeah, it's a great memory.
Yeah.
Therese, you had to just be pining to be back in Stockton and kind of wishing that you could be a part of this, right? I mean, you did win the national championship your last year, but seeing what was going on in Stockton, take us through your emotions watching from afar.
Boy, we ended it so great my senior year, and I guess there's a lot of satisfaction when you leave and you do something for the first time, and sometimes you're ready to move on. And again, we talked about them being such a talented group. I just kind of knew where the program was heading, with John being a new coach and the incoming freshmen that were so talented. We just had a lot of faith in them. And one thing I will have to say is just the boosters were incredible. When you walked in the Spanos Center, even when I watched the match, you could see orange from everywhere. And they're just the most amazing booster club was at Pacific. So yeah. I wasn't surprised when they won, to be honest. I wasn't surprised.
So I wanted to – actually, I'm going to ask Coach Dunning. This is going to be the last one on 1986, but I asked your emotions after 85 in Kalamazoo, like right after you won. What were your emotions? Did they change at all, 86, especially being at the Spanos Center? What was that like for you?
Yeah, I think in 85, I was so overwhelmed by the moment and taken by it that I was kind of stoic and didn't really celebrate as much as you should when you're in that moment. And then 2 months later, thinking back, that was stupid. I should have really celebrated. It may never happen again. You just never know in this world. And so when it came to 86 on the court, I was going to smile. I was going to hug people. I was going to celebrate, because that's the way it should be. And you're not expecting it. You're just enjoying it to the fullest. So for me, it was much more joyous. The first one was hard from the point of view of being new and everything, and not expecting it, or even knowing whether do you deserve it. But the second one, it was fun, and our fans around us, that was really, really fun too.
I can only imagine.
Yeah.
I want to get to some questions. We are going to go a little bit over our usual 1 hour today, just because this is so great. I think everybody's enjoying the memories, but I do want to get to a few questions that had been submitted. And I will start with Coach Dunning with this one. These are questions from the gallery. After winning again in 1986, not losing any seniors, how excited were you for 1987 And did you think you had a good chance to three-peat?
Yeah. Again, I'm not a person who I don't think thinks that way very much. I just want to go on to the next team and go from there. But anybody would think, wow, we were way better than everybody at the end of the season. We didn't even have a close game, let alone a match at the end. And so you have everybody back and you think, but then you just never know what's going to happen in the meantime. And something pretty major happened to our team. And the players that still were on the court, though, they were remarkable in their resilience. When you take someone out of our lineup that we did, to then again be on the brink of, we should have been in the Final Four. We were probably the second best team, but the way everything was set up, we had to play the number one team in the regionals before we could get back to the Final Four, so we didn't get there.
Elaina, how about you? Did you, going into 1987, have a feeling that the team could three-peat?
Yeah, I had a good feel. I redshirted that year, so I blew out my knee, but it was yeah, I really thought I think we played Hawaii in Hawaii that year in the regionals, and
Yep.
we were that close.
Yep.
Well, and we had just beaten them in the Wendy's Classic the weekend before we went to Hawaii to play them, when we lost at the regionals.
Yeah.
I'll never forget that.
Another question here, and this is for Coach Dunning, and I'd imagine we're talking about the first regionals in 1985. What was one of the biggest hurdles you had to get over to win that the title that could have otherwise been a setback? And what did you feel you needed to do as a first-year coach to get the team over the hump to win the whole thing in 85?
I personally thought the UCLA semifinal match was one of the best matches I ever was involved in as a coach. I thought the level of play was ridiculous. I thought that the defense that both teams played was ridiculous. I mean, you're talking about Liz Masakayan on the other side of the net. I thought that was an extraordinary match. And so to have Therese made some amazing plays down the stretch. I remember we used to set her an inside out or an outside in three, and she'd tip it outside the block. She was a total pro at it, just at crucial times making great plays. So I thought that was just something that happened in the program, that the whole program history might have been different if we hadn't have been tough enough to win that match. That'd be a good one to hear what the players thought about that.
Therese, you were part of that. You want to chime in?
Okay, which match? The
UCLA semifinals.
Oh boy,
that was an extraordinary match.
It really was. It really was. I mean, again, you have players, on both sides of that, but on our side of that, they can do it all. You know what I mean? Back then, most of the players played all around. We had a lot of savvy players that had great ball handling, played great defense. And we had really, really long rallies against UCLA. That's what I do remember. Like Mary said earlier, some of the matches were 2.5, 3 hours. So I do remember, again, we're going to go back to this, but Terry McGrath really showed up once again. Yeah. And I will have to say, John, we're talking about that first year, and after winning, you were in complete shock. I will never forget you sitting on the bench. And I kind of came up to you and was shaking you, and you're like, I just can't believe it. I can't believe it. I do remember that. You were really in shock. You really were. So I'm glad the next year you really enjoyed it a little bit more. You were I just needed that year to break you in a little bit.
Well, it was just a year before that I was teaching Janet Wolf trigonometry instead of Mary. So there's a big difference there.
Yeah, but you also won a national championship before you got to Pacific.
Yeah.
Your club team.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So
I have another one here for John. This is a question from the gallery. This person says, I recall a West Regional at Spano Center that had Elaina, T. Williams from Hawaii, Tara Cross from Long Beach, the three best teams and three best players in the country. How hard was it some years to get through those West Regionals to even make the Final Four?
That was amazing. I mean, those were really, really good teams, and we didn't get any favors. given to us. We had to play through it every single time. And that's just what you want as a coach or an athlete, though. You want to play those moments. You want to have a chance to play your best against somebody else who's good enough to beat you. And boy, we sure got our opportunities, that's for sure.
Any of the athletes, do you guys want to add anything to what Coach Dunning was saying about getting through some of those tough regionals?
I think the biggest thing is just what he said, is that there were so many teams that were so good, and that we had to, it basically proved to us as players, as a team, that we knew we were the best, because all those other teams were so good, and we had to play our best in order to beat them. You know, we didn't have that easy, you know, sometimes you can kind of sneak in behind, you got an easy match here, and then you lucked out, somebody else beat an easy team there. And so, you know, the first couple games we kind of walked through. We never had that. We had to play our best every game, so we knew that we deserved our national championships.
Elaina?
Yeah, that was 1989. I remember that we Long Beach beat Hawaii, and then they beat us, or the other way around. But I a few years later, I did camps with the Long Beach setter, Sherry Sanders, and she'd always be like, you know, we used to always lose to those teams, and by the end, we're beating those teams. They beat us one time. One time we beat them. All the other times they beat us. I have to correct her. But yeah, that was like back when you had to like lay out, play at the very edge of your ability, or else you weren't going to win. And then, you know, sometimes you come up short, but sure was fun though.
Another one for Coach Dunning. Pacific's 1999 Final Four team fell just short of winning the NCAA title. How does that 99 team stack up to the two title teams?
You know, comparing teams in different eras, it's something that probably we shouldn't put a lot of time into. That was a great team that had a great season. Elsa, in my opinion, was one of the top 2 or 3 players, if not the best player in the country. We had a whole group of people that played together really, really well. We had a moment in the semis, or several against Penn State, where we were in the lead in set 5. We had a go at it. We took one swing in particular that I just, as soon as we said it, I thought, oh no, because I thought we could have done something different and had an advantage, and it ended up being a tough play. But it was an extraordinary match. And then against Penn State, they had a great team, and then they went on to beat Stanford the next day in the finals. But the scary part of that season was we hosted the second round, and we're going to host the regionals before going to Hawaii. And in the second round, we, I think, won 17-15 in the 5th against Michigan, a team that didn't think they were going to get into the tournament, and had already ended their season, I think, and they had to get back together and come out. But they played great against us. I think Elsa had 45 kills in that match or something. And then we won the regionals easily, and then went to the Final Four with a great chance to win. It was a great team as well. You just know that it's a different moment if you happen to win, if you happen to be lucky enough, or whatever it is, that you were part of something, a team that got all the way to the end as a victor. There's only one team a year in the whole country that wins their last match. To be in that moment, that's different than 99. And that was a wonderful team. Loved coaching, but winning, it's a little different.
Last couple of
questions. If you guys
questions.
had won that game,
Sorry.
you would have won a national championship.
We all thought we would have had a good chance, Elaina. Yeah.
So the last couple here. So the reason we have these talks each week is to keep engaged with people that support Pacific athletics. And I want to say, I don't know, I think it was either Elaina or Mary, or maybe it was Therese that touched on it about the fan support in Stockton. Can you talk a little bit about the support you received from the fans and the boosters while you were at Pacific, and how that catapulted you all to be able to reach the heights that you ended up reaching? Therese, we could start with you.
Sure. Well, that's one of the reasons why I came to Pacific. You know, when I came there and just saw the amount of support, and like I said, we felt like we were the main sport on campus. And I feel like, you know, Terry Liskevich started from, I think, hardly anything. I think he was mopping the floors and buying the uniforms. And you just think about that. You go back to those days and you think about that, and you think about, these people from Stockton where they have something really special and they make you feel special, and you have all that support coming from them and from where the program started. And I don't think a lot of people really know that story going way, way back. It wasn't like these other big programs like UCLA, USC. They were really established, and obviously their budgets were a lot higher, and they had a lot more things. They had a lot more access to things, and I think it's an amazing story. So maybe we'll have another little zoom on that. Going back to the old Pacific Volleyball and how it all started. So, but that's basically how I felt. I felt like it was old school, where I came into a program that was built, from the ground up, and a lot of people made sacrifices for us. And then you come there and then you see, the amount of support, and those boosters took such good care of us in a legal way.
Yeah.
Just so supportive. We had, they were writing us letters, and you know what I mean? We'd stop by their houses, and we were like part of their family, so
Yeah.
I will always remember that. And that's one of the main reasons why, I went to Pacific feeling that way, because a lot of us, were recruited by much bigger schools, which, that had, the bigger budgets and just bigger schools with so much more. But, what we had was much more important as far as that family atmosphere and that support. So I'm so grateful for that.
Mary, how about you?
Yeah, our boosters were so amazing. They were always there, win, lose or draw. They were in the stands. They were cheering for us. They were, they were loud when they needed to be loud, when they knew that we were, maybe getting into a slump, and they were always there cheering us on. One of the things that Therese touched on is, I remember we all had our family, and back when we were playing, it was allowed that we were able to go over to their houses, and they would cook us a home cooked meal, which, you're living off of college and dorm food. And to be able to go and have somebody make you this big spread, dinner and dessert, and talk to you and ask you questions, not only about volleyball, but just, how's your mom and dad? How's, your family? What's going on? Is school going okay? So they would touch on those things. They would save, the newspapers, because we didn't get newspapers, and that's all there was back then. So they would make sure every newspaper clipping that they would save, and they would give them to our parents. But to have them there day in and day out, to know that they were there supporting. I talked to my family as often as I could. And even after I graduated, and I was staying on in Stockton, because I stayed to help John after my senior year as a volunteer or as a grad assistant, and would still even go over and have dinner even after I had graduated. So they were so special and so supportive. Those fans are the best.
Yeah.
Elaina?
Yeah, I'd agree with what those guys said. I mean, going over to their house and having dinner and making big photo albums of all the papers that were in the Stockton record that our parents couldn't see, and we got to take those home. But even like, if you were between a place to stay, like between, fall and spring, you needed someplace, like Georgia too, they're like, hey, you can stay at our house for a few days, which I think is illegal now, but I mean, they would totally do it. And it was just, like they cared for you as people, but then like if you were playing bad, they would get on you. They knew how you were supposed to play, and it was nice playing in front of a knowledgeable crowd, and a big crowd too.
Last but not least, I want you guys to put in your own words, and I'm going to end with Coach Dunning. So I'm going to go to you gals first. What's the legacy in your mind of the 1985 and 1986 volleyball teams at Pacific? The only two national championship teams that the schools had. And Elaina, I'll start with you.
Well, I would say the legends kind of gotten bigger over the years. I mean, it seemed like a little thing back then, but now I think the legacy of it is pretty big. I mean, when I was in Stockton a couple of years ago with Devin Scruggs, we went into Bob's by the Arena, and they recognized us, like they can still pick us out. So I think just the legacy is kind of the royalty of it and the camaraderie of it and the celebration of that. that's kind of is for me.
Well said, Mary.
Yeah, at the time, it was just what we were doing. It was our job. It was what we were supposed to do, and we were successful. And that's, it was exciting, and that's what we did. But when you look back now, knowing that, wow, it's the only ones that the school have had. We walk into Spanish Center if we, when we get the chance, and the first thing we do is we walk in and we look for those banners on the wall, and where is it? And it's like, yep, I was a part of that, and it's pretty exciting to know that when you walk in there that you left your mark.
Therese?
Oh, I think I went over it quite a bit as far as where the program started and then how it built up to when we were there. But I think the 1985 team, I think a lot of the articles said it perfectly, and they said it was the team that surprised the nation. And I believe that is exactly what happened.
And last but not least, Coach Dunning.
It's in last 3 or 4 years following the men's water polo team to the brink of adding their name to the list. It was so exciting to follow, so behind them, and talking to people about the game. Almost went to the game this year because it's when you're part of a community, you want to do things that make your community proud. When you're part of a school, you want to do things that make your school proud. And so this group of athletes put everything on the line, showed the level of play that they were capable of as a group and individually, and they made their school and community proud of them. And that's a neat thing to be proud of, to be part of. So I look back on it, think about it. When I see people and they talk about it, it brings a lot of joy to a lot of people's lives. So it was a wonderful thing to be part of, and it's great of you all to have put a focus on it here for an hour or so. We appreciate it.
Yeah.
Of course, we appreciate you all sharing, and congratulations for still having that amazing legacy. It's still, trust me, it's still very much talked about at Pacific in the offices, the 2 national championships. And if you go into the team room, you can see the trophies right there, and it's a really special thing that you guys did. So thank you for.
Are our banners still up? I heard they moved the banners. Did they take them down?
They're still up. Don't worry.
Oh, okay.
Don't worry. They're still up. Promise they wouldn't touch it. Maybe I don't know if they moved them. It's been a minute since I've been in Spanos. I see a nod from Tim Dixon. Tim, did they move them?
Yes, they did.
Okay, they moved it, but they're still in Spanos, so don't worry about that.
I mean, Elaina, it's actually really cool. The end where the banners used to be hanging,
Yeah.
they made a mural of that whole end. It's a painted mural, the whole wall, like almost floor to ceiling, of all kinds of teams and players and coaches. And there's big pictures of our program, those years' programs. And then the banners are centered on another side of the gym.
Oh, okay.
Really looks good. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for being here and for sharing, and we'll have to do this again down the road. Thank you guys. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
That was great.
Thank you.
Right. Hope everybody enjoyed, and be well and stay safe. Go Tigers.
Go Tigers.
You guys take care.
Bye. Thanks.